race, gender, ideologies, and any ideology of superiority of one kind or another. Therefore, this policy document is guided by the declaration of the Programme of Action of the National Social Cohesion and the National Building Summit, which was held in Kliptown at the Walter Sisulu Square of dedication in 2012. We need government, civil society, and other formations to revisit this document so that we can indeed radically transform our society. Of course, the ANC must take a lead on these issues and work with all key stakeholders so that we can manifest the vision of the NDP as of a truly inclusive society. The policy proposals build on past resolutions to improve the livelihoods of children, to build a robust child protection system. This includes accelerated implementation of the comprehensive Early Childhood Development Program, taking into consideration the proposals of the National Development Plan, the provision of the childcare facilities at public and private sector workplaces, and supporting child-headed households. I want to stress that the child protection goes beyond the formal provision of services by government. It affects each one of us. As part of building a cohesive society, we need to invest in the kind of community organizations that are able to organize people around the issues that affect them and bring these issues to the public domain through dialogue. Supporting these kinds of community organizations on a non-partisan basis is vital in building a common consensus around our communities, characterized by values of trust and reciprocity. The idea of trust and reciprocity is articulated in the NDP vision, which states, and I quote, "We create rather than eliminate. Value arises from improving through creativity that which we inherited." I must repeat this. We create rather than eliminate. Value arises from improving through creativity that which we inherited. Close quote. The proposals that we have outlined and will be discussing today will only be implemented when we conceive a governance as a partnership between communities and community organizations and government. This is the essence of what we would like to see. We would like to see and create a capable state underpinned by professionalism in the public sector, underpinned by values of service, also taking into consideration a continuum of shared leadership between communities and government. This is articulated very clearly also in the NDP statement, and I quote, "Government begins in the home, grows into the community, expands towards the city, flares towards the provinces, and engulfs the entire land. We know our leaders as we have elected them and pledged them into office. They are wise in the use of their wealth, wise in knowing and understanding our wishes and needs, wise in expecting us to express ourselves to them in an appropriate manner. We have agreed to be allowable, wise in not silencing those who criticize, but enable them through certain rules of engagement to be even more vigorous in supporting a just society," close quote. As we can see, ladies and gentlemen, comrades, transforming a society that was broken through colonialism and apartheid was not an easy task for us. It's been a very difficult 23 years. We have done much since then when we started the journey. The policy proposals in the ANC document on social transformation and the manner in which these are articulated will contribute greatly in an inclusive society where we all feel we belong and will contribute through active citizenry. The ANC remains an organization that can lead society along this path and will rebuild ourselves so that we can fulfill our historic mandate. Now, I need to go back a little more to the issues that I raised of emphasis, just so that we are focused on some of the issues that we will be taking to the policy conference. The issue of racism. This committee is committed to ensuring that together with society, we can understand what we mean by racism, the exclusion of people on the basis of color and origin. and make sure that this forms part of how we educate our society, part of how we educate our children. Racism is what defined the past. Racism is not what is going to define us in the future. What is going to define us in the future is a common identity, a common consciousness of who we are as South Africans. It has been very difficult to deal with the issue of racism. However, we've come to this point now where when we talk of radical transformation, we're talking about radical mindset so that we are able to relate to each other on the basis of a shared value system. The issue of creating a national identity, we've been attempting to use through the Department of Arts and Culture to build a consensus in defining what we call national identity. We've used symbols such as the flag, national anthem, tried that at schools to promote a society that has a common national identity, but it has not taken us to the desired end. We're still struggling with this. We have captured this within the Department of Arts and Culture as social cohesion. We've been dealing with this, but we have not begun to reap the benefits of this. We have found, however, that sport is a very potent element in this, in the definition on the feeling of national consciousness. When we experienced the Rugby World Cup in 1995, there wasn't a single South African that did not feel, I belong. Irrespective of color and gender, I belong, that was my team, led by Comrade Nelson Mandela. In 2010, there was a feeling of we are South Africans. Whether Bafana finally won or didn't, that was us, we as South Africans. And I'm informed that such was a feeling of national consciousness and national identity that the police stations closed their doors on those days. And not a single crime was reported around the major cities. Now, this is what I'm informed. For those who are doubting Thomases, we can go back to the records. But this was the most peaceful time we had for a very long time, where we were all glued on, we must find our way in winning this World Cup. We didn't, but there was a feeling of we all belonged. We all shared a particular value. We all shared a particular feeling of pride. But we've got to go beyond sport in creating this national consciousness. And therefore, we would like to discuss this and get sufficient buy-in from our communities as we move forward. But as we talk about national consciousness and a need to carry society with us, we also have to emphasize that we would not like this to hold us back because we don't want our delivery to be held back. So we've got to find a way of continuously having a national consensus on what we're doing while we move forward. The protection of the child is also a matter that we are particularly concerned about. This is a very important matter. In fact, this is such an important matter that the ultimate guardian of every child in this country is the High Court. Children need to feel protected at all times, cared for, and so that we reproduce in our children the ideals that we fought for. The child is the most vulnerable of our society and therefore needs a special type of protection from all of us. We've resolved as a committee here that we're going to discuss this with yourselves and the conference. How do we best support the child within their home, the child outside of their home in societies, and make sure that we can build a confident citizen out of these vulnerable children? The protection of the child means an abuse of children for our own ends, so that the people of Vuane who are unhappy about government should not use the child and withhold the right of the child from going to school as part and parcel of their protest. We would not like the people of the Northern Cape to withhold the child, to hold back the child from going to school because a road has not been built. We would like the child to feel free to grow up in an environment that is not polluted by our own fears, by our own concerns. This is what we would like to ensure happens to all of us. We would like to make sure that the child goes to school and spends most of his time looked after, her time looked after, cared for, fed at school, because we care and because we can. When men abuse innocent children for their own selfish failings, we want to make sure that the law comes down hard on them. We want to deal with the thorny issue also of childhood pregnancies. We are experiencing childhood pregnancies that are beyond what is acceptable. And we would like to deal with this, and we know it's a very thorny issue, but this impedes the child from enjoying their childhood, and we want to make sure that we can discuss this. We want to discuss the issue of the reversal of apartheid spatial patterns, because for as long as we live apart, we reproduce the patterns of apartheid, the culture that apartheid had created of apartness. That, ladies and gentlemen, summarizes what we would like to bring across to you. You have the documents. I hope they have been circulated. We are ready for your questions. We have our trusted team of advisors and DGs. We have the minister here, we have the deputy minister here, and we are ready to engage with you and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Lindy. Can I just check if you have received the documents that the Comrade Lindiwe is speaking about? Yes, okay. All right, thank you, and thank you very much, Comrade. Yes.
Oh.
Yes? Yes. If they haven't, we'll make sure that they're circulated to you and you'll be able to use those in the engagement. Many of you will obviously have the document that was launched at the beginning of March, which was the comprehensive social transformation discussion document towards policy conference. So you can also use that as a basis for discussion. I think Comrade Lindiwe, in her input, highlighted key issues that she would want us to focus on, issues around nation building and social cohesion, issues around racism, issues around protection of the child, issues around women and dealing decisively with patriarchy and so forth. So I will open up for questions. I will request that you please continue to maintain the absolutely appreciated decorum that you have in previous briefings, where you've stuck to the topic at hand, which is the social transformation discussion document. Can I see hands for questions? I'll take number 1 here, number 2. Just those 2. Everybody else is waiting for a brainwave. Number 4. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. In that order, please.
My name is Mwako Mujahid. I'm sorry to mistake. Racism continues to reign its ugly in the country. Is the ANC admitting that it has failed to deal with the issue of racism since it came into power in 1994?
Thank you. Number 2.
Good morning. Okay, I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay. It's Aldrin Simpier from SABC TV News. On the issue of social cohesion and nation building, is it probably the case that what has happened post-1994 is that as a country and probably as government as well, the project on black consciousness has been abandoned? Now we speak of social cohesion, but we're more calling on white people to come to the party and forgetting to speak to even the black person, wherever they find themselves, to know their worth, to know what it means to be a black person in South Africa, and to know that you are also an equal to the white person who stands right in front of you. Because we see what happens, for instance, in the workplace, where Peter would do something, and there's no DC for a Peter, but there will be a DC for a Thabo. And the Thabo wouldn't take that matter up and would not make the argument that this is part of racism, because I believe that there is the lack of understanding what it means to be black and black consciousness, and having the ability to know that this is what I deserve as well as a fellow black South African. And looking at this document, should xenophobia not be part of what's being discussed as part of social transformation? Because dealing with xenophobia as a crime issue, it features in the peace and stability discussion document, instead of featuring in this social transformation document, where it is the ordinary South Africans who come in contact with the foreign nationals, whether they are here illegally or legally, and it can't be the project that it must be the Home Affairs Department that goes out to communities and speak about how communities must treat foreign nationals, where it should be a social transformation issue. If we speak about racism, if we speak about black and whites in South Africa, we must also be able to speak about how do South Africans and foreign nationals live in cohesion in the country. Thanks.
Thank you. Number 3. Nati, can you help us, sir?
My name is Teta Matlakwana. I write for Business Day. I have a question around the national identity that the minister spoke of. You mentioned reinforcing some form of national identity via the promotion of flags and the singing of the national anthem, for example. And you speak of how sports has been found to have built cohesion in the country. But I think it's quite common knowledge that the sports effect is quite temporary. The kind of national pride that you saw in 2010, for example, exists no more. You spoke of how you have in a restaurant 2 people who are referred to as 2 black people, a trend that you'd like to see change. But I don't hear anything specific outside of those sort of interventions that are obviously quite of a temporary effect. I don't hear any more interventions that speak to addressing issues around the psyche of the South African, because I think that's fundamentally what has to change. And I don't know how much of that should be or has been considered in this document, and that you can elaborate more on, because I think that's important in sort of getting the conversation to where it should be, instead of being regressive in addressing it, because most of these issues we are all quite aware of, and we are quite aware of the kind of impact it has. The other question I have is around the protection of the child, and I'm going to refer to the issue that happened or that was discovered in Raglu in the Northwest. The country was quite appalled by those pregnancies of those learners in their hundreds, and rightfully so. But the question and the disturbing part is there has not been a program that has sought to dig within the schooling system these trends, but to not only stop them, but to ensure that the teachers and the education system itself takes responsibility and somehow finds ways of meeting some or creating some policy adjustments to how they function as educators, in order to ensure that these issues are reported for what they are, that we can talk of statutory rape when it's statutory rape, and we don't have issues where we talk of teenage pregnancy outside of that very fact, which is more important than anything else in rooting it out. So if you could just elaborate on how the protection of the child will focus on that specific issue that I feel has been underaddressed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Behind you.
Good morning, Nicholas Bauer from eNCA. I have several questions, so if you just bear with me. Talk about this consensual cohabitation within South Africa, that we've moved along since 1994 together. Now we're talking about 14-1, I think we are all South Africans. And what position is the ANC in to be making such calls when in an election year you're so very divided? Some may argue the most divided you've ever been in history. So what hope do you have a fortune as one identity when we're in an environment where people are being blamed? White people are being blamed for the stealing of resources, black people are being blamed for bad governance, that type of thing. How do you fix something like that when your organization is racked by other issues like infight? Deputy Minister Osman, perhaps you'd be in a best position to answer this. There's talk about using sports as national with a specific reference to hosting international events like the Rugby World Cup in 1995, 2010 FIFA World Cup as well. We've had to cancel the hosting of certain international events due to a lack of funds, Commonwealth Games being an example. And we've also had to rescind the rights of hosting international competitions because of a lack of transformation. So how do you overcome those challenges within this call to use the use of language. There has been great progress in terms of the basic education department forcing, or at least saying that it's policy for our learners to learn one indigenous black African language right up to until matric. But what conversations are you having among yourselves, especially the use of black African indigenous languages among white people in South Africa?
And then last but not least, for you, Minister Sisulu, or Comrade Sisulu, since this is an eNCA.
You learn.
We live and we learn. In your documents, Comrade Sisulu,
You talk about the need for nation building and building trust in
the citizens in our society that the
ANC is using the levers of power for, that the powers of the state will be used for the nation's interest. So what are we to do as South Africans when we see the levers of state, especially in the security cluster, like in intelligence and elsewhere,
used for nefarious purposes? Perhaps you could give a viewpoint on what role you think intelligence, dirty tricks,
and such?
are going to play as you head for a policy conference and also in the run-up to the elective conference as well. Thank you.
Okay, as I ask Comrade Lindy to come up and direct how the questions will be taken, on the issue of the languages, we will have a specific section on education and health, but perhaps Comrade Lindy will speak to that one from a social transformation perspective. And then on issues relating to the conference in general, I think the issue is around the building of trust in society. Thank you so much.
I'll just deal with two questions here to break the ice and ask Minister of Women to deal with the issue of the protection of the child, pregnancy, and etc. I will ask Gert, Deputy Minister, to deal with the issues on sport. I think there were several issues that were asked about sport. There are questions about our attempts at nation building. We have the ADG, or DG of Arts and Culture, and we still have remnants of black consciousness amongst us, including myself and the gentleman there. So to just make sure that you answer that question as well. The issue of xenophobia, there is only so much that you can put into a document. When you talk about transformation, there's hardly an area in society that we will not be touching on. But so as to focus, we did ensure that we can delineate between departments what it is. So there would be an overlap between our own definition and the definitions that you find in other clusters. But these are documents for discussion. We would not only want to get questions, but also suggestions on how we can perhaps see the world differently. These are out for discussion. We will continue these discussions in the conference. So we would also like to take some of these matters as inputs rather than questions if we're not able to get beyond that. National identity, how do we deal with the psych? DG, that is you again. Can I ask the Minister of Women to deal with the issue of language? What do we do about language? Should we not, I think the question, I understand it, is so that we are able to create a national consciousness and a national identity. What are we saying about the use of black languages for white people? Did I understand you correctly? Are you going to be comfortable with that? Okay, and then there was a direct question that came to me. I will come back to any of the others after the answers have been given. But I don't know why the one about the Minister of that some departments or ministers use their powers for nefarious purposes, why that is aimed at me.
Based on your background in intelligence.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay, that makes sense. I just tried to work out how can we marry this with human settlements, spatial planning, and engineering, and all of that. Okay, let me start off with that. And are we admitting that we have failed on the issue of racism? You know, we are actually indicating what we have done, what we have learned, what we have found we have not been able to remove in our society, which forms part of our own freedom charter. And this is one of them, not because we have failed, Mwako, but because we have not reached the point at which we should be right now. I indicated that this committee did try to deal with the issue of racism a few years ago, and we found the environment not ready. I think that resolving a problem also has to do with finding the right time and the right message. Because if you have the message, but it is not in a right space and the right time, you might easily completely confuse what it is that you are, what outcome you are wanting out of that. So we did deal with this matter, and the environment was not ready for this matter, but we believe now the environment is ready. Racism is something everybody identifies with. Racism no longer needs definition. Racism is something that we want to find in the past, and we're dealing decisively with it now. This is the mind shift that we're wanting to create. We've got to move away from any exclusionary practices that discriminates one group from another in any form whatsoever. On the issue of how do we hope to move forward on from a consensual cohabitation, this is my language, so please don't attach it to the ANC just in case somebody denies ownership. It is my understanding of what it is that we've been going through. We've been cohabitating with each other without integrating into the kind of society we had dreamt of and had hoped to have post-liberation. And what are we doing about this when we ourselves are wrecked in consensual cohabitation? Or in factionalism and divisions. How do we hope to be a mirror that society can look at and say, that's myself, those people represent me because they have gone beyond my own failings if I have a problem? No, we do have problems. We are a product of our society. We are a product of our times. It does not mean that what we want for our country and our people is something that we have ourselves already overcome. We struggle with these matters on a regular basis. We deal with them. We deal with the issue of factionalism. We deal with the issue of nascent tribalism from time to time. We're concerned about those matters. And these are matters that we would like discussed in our branches. These are matters that we would like discussed in the public domain, so that by the time we get to the policy conference, we have a solution of how do we rectify our own mistakes first before we can say to people, look at me and see in me an example of what should be. So yes, indeed, unfortunately, we still have divisions in our society. From a perspective of intelligence, I'm not aware what it is that you're specifically talking about, but we as a government created the Office of the Public Protector. Right at its inception, the intention was that should there be any citizen who feels that anybody in power is abusing their power for any reasons other than carrying out the duties of the state, they have a public protector to go to. So we did create the necessary checks and balances for any abuse of power in our society. I will then ask the Minister of Women, please, to come and deal with questions that have to do with her area of specialization. She's been a solid member of this committee, a member of the NEC for as long as I can remember, so she'll also be able to deal with some of the other questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Just to deal with the challenge which is faced by children, but also the prevailing cases which we have in Northwest, I must indicate that whilst as government we continue writing laws, but also we find ourselves in a space where various laws have good intentions, but some of them lead to negative results, lead to some unintended consequences. The issue of Northwest, if I can be specific with that, of young girls being married or being pregnant, it's an issue which has been addressed through the law enforcement agencies in our country. But I don't think that's the solution, which will ultimately reduce the teenage pregnancy at various schools. The other day we were having a discussion with Minister of Basic Education. One of the key factors which we've agreed is that some of the issues have to be dealt with through your curriculum, your life orientation, but also building social aspects in various areas. For instance, when you deal with biology, you have to address these issues of socialization of young children or teenage girls and boys, because it's not only girls and boys, girls only, it's also boys, in a way that will form part of the curriculum, not on the basis of life orientation, because the biggest challenge we have now is that all these issues are dealt with within your life orientation curriculum instead of being included at various levels when you deal with issues of reproductive rights. That needs to form part of our education system. When you deal with issues of biology, they need to be integrated into that for young girls to understand how are they socializing in various areas. One of the issues which I think as part of social transformation, it's the issue where there's an unintended consequences which we are picking up as the Department of Women when we're involved in dialogues. It's the issue which in law, or part of the laws which we have passed, there are contradictory mechanisms. One of those, it's the area of, in one of our provinces, I'm not going to mention, where we have identified through Stats SA, where you find that there are kids of the age, between the age of 12 and 17, who are married. And these are some of the issues, and when you look at that, it tries to deal with one of the issues which we've raised, the issue of statutory rape versus your Children's Act, which allows girls as young as 12-year-old not to consult with their parents, for instance, when they go on abortion. So these are the factors. When you look at the law, whilst it has good intention and protect the girl children, but it also has other negative effects. And linked to that, as I say, that you find girls of age between 12 and 17 who are married. And when you compare that, you also look at Minister Mtswaledi's She Conquers, the program which was launched by Deputy President last year, addressing the issue of ensuring that young girls from the age of 14 up to the age of 24, they are kept at school, but they are also encouraged to continue being educated. Those laws which we have passed also contradicts that. And I must also say, then you find that when you talk about these girls who are between the age of 12 and 17, and I think it deals with the issue of teen pregnancy too, you find that the same age or young boys in the recent study published by Department of Health together with the World Health Organization, where it has been discovered, especially here in South Africa, that we have girls between the age of 14 and 24 who are HIV positive. But when you relate and look at that in terms of their peers, boys, the boys are not HIV positive. So it's all those kind of issues which are a challenge as we move towards improving the quality of life for teenagers, for young people, but at the same time there are unintended consequences which arises out of that. And just to deal with also this particular issue, it's not an issue which we can deal with within one day. It's a process, it's a patriarchal society which we come from, which has been there for many, many years, where the issue of the girl child has never been a priority. with the laws we are passing right now in protecting the girl child, continues to be a challenge. The other issues I've indicated, the issue of the girl child. We have legislation within the Child Act or the Marriage Act, which allows the marrying a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old with the consent of a parent. So if you look at that law which gives a consent, you look at a law which says a child at the age of 12 can commit abortion without the parent's consent. But also when you look at that, the other one, it's about the statutory rape you're talking to. All these laws, if you pull them together, there are contradictions. And I think these are some of the issues as the STC, which we've got to start addressing. How do we harmonize? How do we protect the girl child? How do we make sure, whilst parents have rights, but also they're not involved in the consent of marrying their kids when they're supposed to be at school? But looking at what Minister Motsoaledi has come up with, the issue of the campaign on She Conquers, and making sure that quality education is given to young girls up to the age of 14, it happens, because that affects girls and boys are not in there. So these are the issues, as you asked there about Northwest, which relates to, we've got to review or revisit our various legislations and make sure that they talk to each other, but they're able to protect the girl child. Because the key issue now is that their girl children get protected, but also get exposed within the same laws. So we've got to look at how do we harmonize our laws in a way that advance the interest of the child.
Anything else, Minister? Please feel free to.
Yeah, I think these are the issues, but I must also add to say we're having national dialogues which intend to deal with issues of women abuse and children. The dialogues were launched by the President in Limpopo last year. We will be visiting the next province in really trying to get to the causes and the problems. Why are there no remedial measures? And the issue of socialization in our society, why is it not getting better? But where we continue to see that young girls and women continue to be vulnerable in our society. The last point I also want to raise as we deal with dialogues, it's also how best can women get empowered for them to be able to have self-confidence and be able to find themselves in spaces where they can work and take care of themselves. These are the issues which we are dealing with. As I speak, our next dialogues are going to be held in Mpumalanga, in going to various provinces, partnering with various stakeholders, civil society, business, government departments, in making sure that we are able to find mechanisms which can advance and protect not only the women but also the children. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning, members of the media and comrades present. Minister, if I understood the question correctly, it was about the Comrade, if I understood the question correctly, apologies for that. It was about the possible banning or the curb we had put on hosting international events by certain sporting codes. Now, just for the background, you may recall that we had a national sport and recreation in Durban, well attended by all the NGOs, public entities in sport and all the sporting federations. Unanimously agreed on a national sport and recreation plan. Part of that plan is a transformation charter and a scorecard. Having gone 2 years down the line and having assessed what has happened in terms of transformation and the scorecard, it was clear to us that we need to do some measure with we started with 5 priority sporting codes, the 5 big ones, you may recall them, and that we had to encourage them a little bit to speed up their processes and to sharpen their pencils. And hence we did then say we are not satisfied with the results that we've seen from the EPG, the Eminent Persons Group, who's concentrating on transformation in sport. And until such time that we see significant progress, we will not give government support for any bidding or hosting of international events. Since then, a lot of things has happened. And on Tuesday morning coming, I hope DG, Comrade DG, that the media will be there in the great numbers. We will release the first EPG report that's been completed. Early indications are that we did succeed in encouraging certain federations to really speed up the processes to reach the targets. So having said that, let me just say that part of our sports tourism strategy has always been to bring people to our shores, to earn foreign currency, and to build the case and to make the case for sport. Comrade Chair, if I may just also reflect on something else, is the promotional campaigns of our department that we do, and I just want to refer to one. Such a campaign was what we had in the new stadium here in Soweto, where we had the Springboks and the All Blacks playing. We had a host of festivities, and we have seen people coming for the first time in their lives to Vilakazi Street, discovering the cuisine, what's on offer there. And ever since, we've seen people going there and really getting to know one another. So we think we're also, in that sense, comrade, contributing largely to building this country, social cohesion, and really building a nation in South Africa. I trust I've dealt with all the questions. Comrades, thank you so much.
Comrade Gert, there was a question on language, and I think the question was, should we not, as we deal with language as a common denominator, should we not be asking that there should be a compulsory African language? Did I understand you correctly? I think you're the best person to answer that question for no reason that I can think of, but...
He also speaks Setswana.
He speaks Setswana? Oh, okay.
I can't remember how to bua Setswana. Re te kopana wena o utlwa gore ke bua le wena. Ha o nkutla bona comrade. Yes, yeah, but I'm good.
That's it for you. That's it for you. I think we will take some of these questions also as suggestions to take forward to the conference, and make sure that perhaps our curriculum does include an African language as a compulsory language for every, not as an alternative language, but as a compulsory language, so that ultimately we are one people. And I thought I had him on the back foot. He really rose to the occasion. Thank you very much. There was a question here that would be dealt with by arts and culture. Thank you.
Ministers, Deputy Minister, DGs. Oh,
No, it's ministers to you.
Yes, yes. Yes, thank you. And DGs, members of the media. Maybe just starting to talk about the issues of black consciousness. We might not be dealing with them directly, but I must just say that whenever we are tackling issues of race and racism, we always make it a point that it is understood that those are not just natural phenomena, but that these are just social and cultural as well as political constructs. Therefore, every time we have discussions around this, we ensure that we debunk the myths of white supremacies that has been perpetuated over centuries. And our focus, of course, it becomes very Africa focus. As you would know that as a department in particular, we have capitalized on Africa Month, more particularly this month of May, as Africa Month, where also we create platforms for conversations. We bring different scholars, different thinkers to come and discuss issues in as far as Africa is concerned. We've got exhibitions, we've got cultural exchanges, and we've got platforms where we create a platform where South Africans and our neighbors participate as part of saying, we're all Africans. So that's an approach that we have adopted as government. That also begins to deal with issues of xenophobia and Afrophobia, because it's only when we deal with these matters, when we discuss these matters, when we create platforms where we interact and we create this perception that we are all Africans, that we will be able to deal with these matters. But also there was a question, Minister, regarding the national symbols and of course how these are dealt with in such a way that they impact on the national psyche. Let me just start by saying that the way we approach national symbols, we always bring to the attention of all South Africans that the origins of the national flag, national anthem, the national coat of arms, they bear testimony to the attempt by post-colonial and democratic state to forge a new identity, an identity that is inclusive in that it has elements of the old and the new. And of course, we have continued to encourage the hosting of the flag in every school and singing of the national anthem. And we must say that there has been significant progress, more particularly in the singing of the national anthem in schools and in public events. But also we are quite aware of the fact that this should just not be singing, but they should really impact on the national psyche. And therefore, working with the Department of Basic Education, national symbols are now part of the curriculum. If you look at, and they are part of life orientation. So this shows that we are very serious about national symbols, but also that those who are in schools, they will grow up knowing the meaning and the symbolism of those national symbols. So I just thought that maybe I'll need to stop there, Minister. I don't know whether there's anything that I might have left.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the panel for those comprehensive responses. It's 11:15. We aim to finish at the very latest by 11:30, so I'll take the last round. Please keep it as short and succinct as possible so our answers can be the same. Can I see hands? And let me start with those who haven't spoken. Number 1. Number 2. Aldrin, you'll be number 3. Number 4, and those are the last ones. Thank you, in that order.
Good morning. My name is Ntewa. I'm with the SABC. Minister, there is no dispute that the ANC has done a lot since 1994 in terms of social transformation. But the question is, have you managed to take South Africans along through this path of social transformation? And I'm saying this against the backdrop of what has happened over the past few years or so. For instance, if you look at the Social Cohesion Summit that was held in Kliptown, Walter Sisulu Square of Dedication to be precise. That was meant to be attended by all South Africans to deal with the problems that were facing them there. But we were with the hope that it won't happen again. And since then, a number of attacks on foreign nationals have happened. So that on its own, the question is, have we really involved them in that process? And if you look again at what happened in Vuane, for instance, in Vuane, where people felt that they were not sort of consulted when they were forced to move into one municipality, a decision was taken, despite the fact that they've raised concerns. And again, the minister has just said that it seems there's a contradiction within our law, especially if you look at the 12-year-old having the right to do an abortion, and at the same time the law says it's illegal or it's criminal to have a 17-year-old a 16-year-old being impregnated. Have you really sort of involved, especially ordinary people, when we formulate this constitution, when we draft these laws? Because it seems some of the things, they were not part of that. Or were we only rushing to have the best constitution that is regarded the best in the world, informed by Western cultures? Thank you.
Thank you. Behind you.
Sarah Valt from Beeld. It's a short question. Why was the policy conference moved to Nasrec? And will the national conference still be at, in Midrand?
Number 3. Sorry, the question was, why was National Policy Conference moved to Nasrec? And where will be the national conference? Yeah, I'll respond to that. Number 3 is...
I just wanted to ask about the social wage input in the document. There's mention of a need for there to be accelerated work in ensuring that the social security, comprehensive social security strategy is implemented. What is the progress with that, and what are some of the issues that are outstanding in ensuring that South Africa gets that policy legislated? Because there has been discussions for quite a while at NEDLAC, and the Deputy President updated the nation earlier on this year about its status, that there was still some work to be done. What exactly needs to be done? What are the hindrances in getting that done and approved and finalized? My other question is on the response from the Women's Minister to the question around statutory rape and pregnancies. Instead of, you mentioned the interventions of the curricula. Instead of teaching, for example, life orientation, which deals mainly with anatomy and that sort of question, is it maybe not time that South Africa, given the high rate of rape and quite abnormal rate at that, considers teaching rather about rape culture, teaching the boy child and the girl child about rape culture, so that they not only have survivalist instincts but are able to ensure that they do not sort of fall along the same way. They know when to identify issues such as grooming at an earlier time to alert their parents and educators and so on, because there's quite a lot that can be taught to the children in order to empower them in ensuring that we don't have this scourge going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Last one is Aldrin.
Aldrin Simpie again from the SABC. On the question that was just mentioned, sorry, is it DG or DTG? Acting, okay, sorry. On the question around the national anthem, a debate has been raised, quite specifically by the EFF, saying that Afrikaans should be taken away from the national anthem. Is it time for South Africa to have this discussion whether what is perceived to be apartheid symbols, such as having Afrikaans in the national anthem, such as having statues of leaders of colonialism being erected, isn't it time that South Africa has this discussion around the national anthem? And I ask this question also on the backdrop that you have the ANC now, for instance. When we go to ANC events, there are two anthems that are being sung. There is the national anthem, and then there is the Inoxontonga version as well of Nkosi Sikelel' iAfrika. Is the ANC not sending contradictory messages to South Africans, where we say in certain spaces we can sing the national anthem, including the stem in the national anthem, but in certain spaces we will sing the stem, but also Nkosi Sikelel' as composed by Inoxontonga. And then Minister of Women, you mentioned the issue around ensuring or helping women become confident that they can be in certain positions. And right now the ANC is having the discussion around whether or not a women president should lead or anything like that. When we look at what happened during the elections, for instance, just pre the elections, the local government elections, concerns were raised that even women themselves are the ones who vote for males. And you find a situation where you have in parliament at the moment, out of all the political parties that are in parliament, there's only one political party that is being led by a female, and that is the NFP, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it's the NFP. Is this not a concern?
Thank you. I think that was the last question. I thought you were going to ask if we're not concerned that the DA, in electing their leadership in the Eastern Cape, there was not a single woman who was elected. All right, we'll take those questions. If I could just respond quickly to the issue of the policy conference being moved to Nasrec. The ANC would have received a more favorable package for our requirements from Nasrec, so that's why the decision was taken. Thank you, ma'am.
I'll respond to the first one, which is from the SABC about whether or not we have taken our people along with us as we draft our laws. And the question from the BILD has been responded to. The issue about basic wage and statutory rape, I will apportion to the responsibility to the minister in the presidency. Should we not be teaching our children about rape culture? DG Jenny Schreiner, would you like to take that on? Yes, okay. And on the national anthem, DG will also have a bite on that. And you have to answer the last one, Minister, on local government elections that here we are going on about women and empowering women when in fact we ourselves are falling short of the standards we want society to set for themselves. I'd like to start off with the national anthem just briefly to say that there is one national anthem, and the national anthem is in the Constitution. We're open to any suggestions that we might amend the Constitution, and every political party would be required to follow the normal processes in motivating such a move, and it requires 2/3 of Parliament to vote any amendment to the Constitution. Is the ANC not sending mixed signals in singing one anthem and then another? There's only one national anthem. However, the ANC has historically had its own anthem, and in ANC functions we sing our own anthem, which is the eNCA. But for national events, we sing the national anthem. So we've never conflated the two. We've never. I think it was a matter of emphasis. Does that make sense? It is, here was the ANC coming together to get the January 8th statement. January 8th is a day that the ANC celebrates, but at the same time we wanted to confirm that we accept the national anthem as it is stipulated in the Constitution. Repetition has never been a failure. It just reinforces the message. No, but the ANC anthem is the eNCA one. It doesn't have the DSTEM. The DSTEM is the national anthem, and that is what the Constitution has in place, and that is what we sing for national events. January 8th is not a national event; it's an ANC event. Okay. Do we not, the question from the SABC, do we not consult our people and take them along as we make laws? We do. There's a great deal of consultation. There's a whole process of putting bills through Parliament, very extensive processes, and the biggest chunk of that is consultation. The biggest chunk of that is consultation, where in fact the reason it takes us so long to get any legislation through is because we've got to be certain that we've done the necessary consultations throughout the length and breadth of our society. But sometimes things do fall through the cracks, and at times we also find that in distilling what we've got from our society, we've got to put it into legal language, we've got to put it into enforceable legal language, and some of the issues might fall through the cracks because we cannot translate them into the necessary language or the necessary format that is required by our laws. But these are things that we go back to from time to time to ensure that when we find that there is a law that is in contradiction with another, we are required to amend that. What the Minister was explaining to us is that society is continuously growing. We are growing. We're growing in our own ability to discharge the responsibility of the state. We learn every day. And as we learn, we perfect the things that we do and the way that we do them. And in some cases, we will find that there are contradictions in what we have from one legislation to another. And we are hoping that on a regular basis, we will go back to conferences such as the one that we have to be able to identify what it is that we are not doing right, what it is that is in contradiction with any other law that is there, and amend it accordingly. But we do take deliberate steps to consult. The term imbizo is now one that is permanently etched in our work ethics, because we are required to ensure that we take society along with us. We govern at their pleasure, we govern on their behalf, and therefore we make sure that at all material times we consult them on all those decisions that we take on their behalf. Minister in the Presidency.
Thanks, Minister. Just to deal with the issue of the social wage. When you deal with the social wage, normally we look at it from various areas, but we also have to recognize that there are various aspects which the ANC, but also the South African government has implemented. Because if you talk about social grants, it forms part of your social wage. I know some people will dispute that it's not, that it's about how do you enhance and improve your communities in various ways. If you look at the social grant, the child grant, are part of your social wage if you've got to look at it. But when you look at NEDLEC, where now we're talking about the national minimum wage, in South Africa it's very interesting because we talk about the national minimum wage, but also we talk about, what's that other one? It's wages too. What? No. Now we've agreed with the partners on a national minimum living wage. Susan. It's all wages, but the issue is that, as we know, that the purpose of a national minimum wage has been deliberated upon by the various stakeholders and agreed on a national minimum wage. It's not a living wage. I need to clarify that, because living wage will incorporate your social grants, your pensions, what other factors which are built in, the issues of saying those who have access to food parcels, in making sure that it contributes to their well-being. That will be packaged within your social wage. But where we are as a country, we are one way in addressing the issues of social wage, even if it's not comprehensive. I'll also add to that one of the debates in which we are dealing with right now, it's about the issue of child care. It's one of the debates we're having to say, given that there's a responsibility of child care, how do you define it? There's the issue which we're talking about now, unpaid work. You know, as a mother, you're not paid for taking care of your child. So that's what we refer to when we talk about social wage, recognizing unpaid work which people perform, especially women, and not being paid for, but seeing as an obligation or a responsibility for women. These are some of the issues which, when we talk about social wage, will have to be recognized. And where we are, these are some of the debates which are extensive, we're engaging, but also recognizing that we can't deal with issues at the end of the day or take decisions which we cannot effect. We've got to recognize that when you deal with social work, there are various aspects which you've got to recognize. But as we are right now as government, together with the social partners, labor and business, there's been an agreement on a national minimum wage, which says no person must work for less than 3,500 per month in South Africa. You raised the issue of statutory rape. I think the issue of which you are raising, I will also touch on the issue of education, what goes on at school.